Stop what you're doing. Look at your phone. That text you sent 3 hours ago explaining why you were late. That email where you justified your decision with 4 paragraphs of context nobody asked for. That conversation where you defended your choice to someone who had zero authority over your life. You just confessed to a crime you didn't commit. The crime, believing your existence requires permission. There's a courtroom inside your skull. You didn't build it. Can't remember the construction date, but it's been operating since you were 6 years old, running 24/7, and you are always the defendant. Every choice gets dragged before the bench. Every action gets cross-examined, and you stand there, exhausted, terrified, explaining yourself to a judge who will never be satisfied. I did it because you have to understand that. The reason was, the explanations pour out like a confession, and with every word, you hand the gavel to someone else. Your boss, your girlfriend, the stranger on Twitter who questioned your opinion, even your enemy. Niccolo Machiavelli spent decades watching this pattern destroy men in the corridors of Florentine power. He saw princes lose kingdoms not because they made wrong decisions, but because they explained their right ones. He saw men of virtue annihilated not by their actions, but by their justifications. In chapter 17 of The Prince, he writes something most people misread. It is much safer to be feared than loved. But buried in that observation is something darker. The one who explains is the one who has already submitted to another's authority to judge him. This isn't about tactics. This is about the metaphysics of why your soul is dying every time you say, "Let me explain." Let's go deeper. Into the architecture of your compulsion. You were 5 years old. You broke something. A vase, a rule, a promise. And an authority figure loomed over you with that question that rewired your brain. Why did you do that? In that moment, a contract was signed in blood you didn't know you had. You learned that your actions don't speak for themselves. You learned that reality isn't what happened. It's what you can convince the authority figure happened. You learned that survival depends on the quality of your explanation. Fast forward 30 years. You're an adult now, legally. But psychologically, you're still that 5-year-old standing in front of an imaginary parent trying to prove you deserve oxygen. Freud called this the internalized superego, the voice of authority you swallowed whole and now mistake for your own conscience. But it's not your conscience. It's their voice wearing your face like a mask. Every time you justify yourself, you're feeding that voice. You're saying, "Yes, you are the judge. I am the defendant. Please find me innocent so I can breathe again." But here's the horror. The trial never ends. No matter how perfectly you explain, the verdict is always insufficient. Because the trial was never about truth. It was about power. And you gave yours away the moment you accepted the role of defendant. Think about your last relationship. She texted something passive-aggressive. You could feel the trap in it, the bait, the setup for you to defend yourself, explain yourself. It's the dance she choreographed. And you did it. You typed out 3 paragraphs explaining your position. You were calm, reasonable. You cited specific examples. You made your case like a lawyer presenting evidence. She read it, left you on read for 2 hours, then responded, "K, you lost. Not because your argument was weak, because you argued at all." She didn't want your explanation. She wanted your submission. And you gave it to her, wrapped in the language of reason. Machiavelli understood this with brutal clarity. In his discourses on Livy, he writes, "Men are so simple and so subject to present necessities that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived." Read that again. You are deceiving yourself. You tell yourself that if you just explain clearly enough, thoroughly enough, humbly enough, they will understand. They will absolve you. They won't. Because the person demanding your justification isn't seeking understanding. They're seeking confirmation that they control you, and every word you speak confirms it. Now let me show you something most people never see. Justification isn't monolithic. It has layers, levels of degradation, a hierarchy of psychological slavery. Most people live and die at level 2 or 3, never knowing there are depths below them and heights above them they can't even imagine. Let me show you where you are. Level 1, the innocent. This is the child. Pure reflex. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. The innocent doesn't understand yet that the trial is rigged. He still believes in fairness, in objective truth. He thinks if he presents the facts, he'll be vindicated. He won't be. But he doesn't know that yet. Most people grow out of this by age 12. Some never do. You see them in corporate boardrooms at 45, presenting data like it matters. Shocked when the promotion goes to the guy who played golf with the CEO instead. They bring spreadsheets to knife fights. They cite metrics when the game is about loyalty. They think competence is currency when the real economy runs on something else entirely. Level 2. The diplomat. I understand why it looks that way, but let me give you context. The diplomat has learned that facts aren't enough. You need tone, softness, emotional intelligence. He massages egos while he explains, uses I statements, validates feelings. This is where most mature adults live. They think they've transcended defensiveness because they're using calm voices and therapy language. But they're still explaining, still justifying, still on trial. The diplomat is sophisticated slavery with a college degree. You see this everywhere. The manager who spends 10 minutes softening the blow before delivering a simple instruction. The guy who apologizes for taking up space before asking a question in a meeting. The woman who prefaces every opinion with, "I might be wrong, but..." They think they're being considerate. They're being conquered. I watched this play out last month. A friend, brilliant guy, VP at a tech company. His boss questioned a decision in front of the team. My friend went into diplomat mode, explained his reasoning, acknowledged the concern, offered 3 alternatives, spoke for 12 minutes. His boss said, "Thanks for the input. We're going with Johnson's approach instead." Johnson hadn't said a word, just nodded when asked if he could handle it. My friend spent the weekend replaying the meeting, wondering what he said wrong. He still doesn't understand. The error wasn't in what he said. It was in saying anything at all. Level 3. The philosopher. Here's why I made that choice, and here's the moral framework that supports it. The philosopher tries to win by outthinking the attacker. He quotes Kant. He cites principles. He builds logical fortresses so airtight that surely, this time they'll have to concede he's right. But logic is not power. Aristotle tutored Alexander the Great, and Alexander still conquered the world with a sword, not a syllogism. Seneca was the wisest man in Rome, and Nero still had him killed. The philosopher dies with his arguments intact and his throat cut. Machiavelli himself was tortured on the rack despite his brilliance. He knew that in the courtroom of power, reason is a toy the strong allow the weak to play with until they get bored. I see this on LinkedIn every day. Someone posts something controversial. An army of philosophers descends into the comments, constructing elaborate rebuttals, citing studies, building cases. And the original poster doesn't even respond, because he's playing a different game entirely. The philosopher thinks debate is combat. It's not. It's theater. And he's the only one who doesn't know he's performing for an audience that's already left the building. Here's what kills me about level 3. These are often the smartest people in the room. Highest IQ, best education, most well-read, and they're the most powerless. Because they've confused intelligence with authority. They've mistaken the ability to articulate with the right to determine. They're chess grandmasters playing against someone who just flipped the board and walked away, and they're still analyzing the position. Level 4. The victim. You don't understand what I've been through. When logic fails, the victim appeals to suffering. He weaponizes his pain to avoid judgment. His trauma becomes a shield. His disadvantages become credentials. But victimhood is just another form of submission. It says, "I am weak, please be gentle." And the world is never gentle to the weak for long. The victim thinks his scars are armor. They're actually just maps showing where to strike next time. You see this in every breakup where someone catalogs their partner's flaws and their own suffering for hours, seeking validation from friends. After everything I've been through, after what he did to me. But suffering doesn't make you right. It just makes you someone who suffered. The victim has discovered that vulnerability can be weaponized, that tears can be tactical, that if you display enough wounds, People will stop expecting competence. And for a while, it works. People tiptoe around you. They make allowances. They lower expectations. You get accommodations for your pain. But here's what the victim never sees coming. Compassion has a half-life. People's patience is finite. And eventually your suffering stops being a reason and starts being an excuse. The friends who used to comfort you start avoiding your calls. The boss who used to understand stops promoting you. The partner who used to accommodate starts resenting you, because pity is not respect, and accommodation is not power. Level 5. The warrior. I don't owe you an explanation. Finally, progress. The warrior has stopped explaining. But he's still angry about it. He's still reacting, still defensive. His silence is hostile. His non-response is aggressive. He's not justifying anymore, but he's announcing that he's not justifying, which is just justification in a leather jacket. True power doesn't announce itself. It simply exists. The warrior is the guy who posts on Instagram, "I don't care what people think." Brother, if you didn't care, you wouldn't be posting about not caring. You're still in the arena. You've just changed costumes. The warrior has learned to say no, but he says it like he's throwing a punch. He's not defending anymore, but he's still fighting. And fighting is just another form of engagement. I know a guy like this. Successful, objectively, built a business from nothing, makes 7 figures, but he treats every conversation like a negotiation he might lose. Every question like an attack he needs to counter. Someone asks him why he made a business decision. He doesn't explain. But his silence is so aggressive, so loaded, that it becomes its own form of explanation. It screams, "How dare you question me?" He thinks he's protecting his power. He's advertising his insecurity, because real confidence doesn't need a defense posture. Mountains don't flex. Level 6. The sovereign. Silence. Not hostile silence. Not passive-aggressive silence. Not the cold shoulder. Just presence. Calm. Unmoved. The sovereign has realized something the first 5 levels haven't grasped. Other people's opinions are weather. They pass. They don't require a response. Mountains don't argue with clouds. When accused, the sovereign doesn't defend, doesn't attack, doesn't deflect. He just exists. Looks at you with the mild curiosity you'd give a dog barking at your car. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince must learn how not to be good, and to use this knowledge according to necessity." The sovereign has learned how not to explain. And he uses this silence like a surgeon uses a scalpel. Precisely. When needed. Never excessively. You're in a meeting. Someone questions your numbers. Implies you made a mistake. Everyone's looking at you, waiting for you to defend yourself. The old you would launch into explanation mode. Data, context, justification. The sovereign, he looks at them for 3 seconds, then looks back at his notes, continues with the presentation. No defense, no acknowledgement, just forward motion. The questioner is left hanging in the air, looking foolish for the unanswered attack. The room moves on, and you just demonstrated something more powerful than being right. You demonstrated that you don't need their validation to proceed. I saw this once in a boardroom. CEO presenting to investors. One guy, hedge fund type, interrupts with a hostile question designed to make the CEO look incompetent. The CEO stopped talking, looked at him, 5 full seconds of eye contact, then turned to the next slide and continued as if the interruption never happened. The investor tried again. Same result. Silence. Eye contact. Continuation. By the 3rd attempt, other investors were looking at the hedge fund guy like he was the problem. He was the disruption. The CEO never defended once, and he won completely. That's level 6. The sovereign doesn't win arguments. He makes them irrelevant. Most people will never reach this level. It requires killing a part of yourself that has kept you alive since childhood. The part that believes you need to be understood to be safe. Level 7. The void. There's a 7th level, but I can't describe it without sounding like I'm writing poetry or having a psychotic break. The void has transcended even the need for strategic silence. He doesn't withhold explanation tactically. He's genuinely forgotten why he would explain in the first place. To him, justification is as foreign as explaining to a tree why you walked past it. The tree doesn't care, neither does he. At this level, you're not playing the game anymore. You're not even refusing to play. The concept of the game has dissolved. Few arrive here. Those who do get mistaken for saints or sociopaths. Often both. Muhammad Ali at his peak had this. Kobe Bryant in the fourth quarter. Certain Navy SEALs I've met. That look in their eyes that says, "Your opinion of me exists in a dimension I don't visit anymore." They're not trying to be intimidating. They're just operating from a place beyond the approval economy that governs normal human interaction. The void is complete ego death regarding external validation. Not suppressed, not controlled, absent, like asking a fish to consider the feelings of the water. So how do you ascend these levels? Not through discipline, not through affirmations. Those are tools of the ego, and the ego is exactly what must die. The transformation happens through a single realization, repeated until it becomes cellular. You are not on trial because there is no court. The judge doesn't exist. Never did. That voice in your head demanding explanation? That's a recording. Your father's voice, your third-grade teacher's voice, your ex's voice, playing on loop. A ghost giving orders to the living. Machiavelli spent years in exile, tortured, abandoned by the very princes he advised. And in that darkness he wrote The Prince, not as a justification of his actions, as an observation of reality unclouded by the need to be loved. He wrote, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." But here's what everyone misses. This isn't advice for ruling others, it's advice for ruling yourself. Stop trying to make the voices in your head love you. Let them fear your indifference. Let them rage at your silence. Let them exhaust themselves against the wall of your self-possession. This is not cruelty. This is freedom. Here's the protocol, and it's brutal in its simplicity. For the next 30 days, you are forbidden from explaining yourself. Not to your boss, not to your girlfriend, not to the barista who gave you a look when you asked for oat milk. If you're late, say, "I'm late," period. No traffic story, no alarm malfunction, no context. If you make a mistake, say, "I made a mistake," full stop. No extenuating circumstances, no explanation of your mental state. If someone misunderstands you, let them misunderstand you. You will feel like you're dying. Good. That feeling is accurate. The you that needs permission to exist is dying. Let it die. Week 1. The withdrawal. Days 1 through 3 are physical. You'll be in a conversation, and the urge to explain will be so strong, it'll feel like a muscle cramp. Your mouth will open. Words will try to form. Your brain will scream that you're being rude, that you're damaging relationships, that people will think you're an asshole. Swallow the words. Your girlfriend will ask why you seem distant. The old you would explain your emotional state, your workload, your stress. You'd build a case for why you're allowed to be quiet. The new you says, "I'm here." That's it. 2 words, no elaboration. She'll push. That's all you're going to say? You. Yes. She'll be confused, maybe angry. Let her be. Her confusion is not your emergency. Days 4 through 7, something strange happens. The people who were demanding explanations start to hesitate, not because they understand you better, because they sense something changed in you that makes the demand feel absurd. It's like trying to put a tiger on trial. The tiger doesn't plead, it just is. Your boss questions a decision. Normally you'd present your reasoning. Instead you say, "I stand by it." He looks at you differently, not with anger, with something closer to uncertainty, because you just shifted the dynamic. You're not seeking his approval, you're stating a position, and position is power. Week 2, the revelation. Days 8 through 14, the disgust phase hits. You'll catch yourself about to explain and feel visceral revulsion, like watching yourself about to eat garbage from a dumpster. A colleague will question your approach in front of others. The old you would have built a detailed defense, presented evidence, sought validation from the room. The new you look at them with genuine curiosity, the way an anthropologist looks at a strange ritual, and you think, why would I explain myself to you? Not as a power move, as an honest question with no answer. And here's what happens in that moment. When you don't deflect, don't engage, The attack collapses under its own weight. The colleague expects resistance, expects you to fight back or crumble. When you do neither, when you just exist calmly in the face of their challenge, they look foolish. The room feels it. You don't have to win. You just have to not lose. By day 14, you start noticing patterns you never saw before. How much of your day was spent in defensive posture? How many conversations were just elaborate justifications? How much mental energy went into crafting explanations for people who didn't actually care? You feel lighter, like you've been wearing a 100-pound pack your entire life and just now realized you could take it off. Week 3. The integration. Days 15 through 21, the protocol becomes natural. You're not forcing yourself to not explain anymore. The desire to explain is fading like a phantom limb. Someone attacks you directly, publicly, questions your competence, your judgment, your character, demands answers, and you say nothing, not aggressive nothing, not hostile nothing, just nothing. You watch them flail. Watch them get more agitated by your calm. Watch them reveal themselves while you remain a mirror they can't read. The room doesn't side with them. The room gets uncomfortable with them. Because in the absence of your defense, their attack looks unhinged, disproportionate, desperate. You won without fighting. Because you refuse to enter their frame. Here's a real example from someone on day 19. He's in a relationship that's been rocky. His girlfriend, sensing the shift in him, tries to provoke a fight. Accuses him of not caring, of being emotionally unavailable, of changing into someone cold. Old him would have spent 2 hours explaining his feelings, justifying his behavior, proving he cares. New him says, "I hear you." She escalates. "That's it? That's all you have to say?" Him, "What else would you like me to say?" Notice the shift. He's not defending. He's not justifying. He's genuinely asking what she wants. And in that question, the power dynamic flips. She's the one making demands. He's the one calmly asking for clarity. She doesn't know how to respond. Because the script she expected, the dance she choreographed, requires him to defend himself, and he's not dancing. Week 4. The death. Days 22 through 30, you realize you've forgotten how to be insulted. Because insult requires believing someone else has the authority to judge your value. And you've starved that belief to death. Someone calls you arrogant, selfish, cold, and you feel nothing. Not because you've suppressed the reaction, because the reaction isn't there. It's like being called a bad chess player by someone who doesn't play chess. The criticism exists in a framework you no longer inhabit. Machiavelli never wrote this explicitly, but it's hidden in every page of his work. The man who masters himself needs no external kingdom. This is not about dominating others. It's about refusing to be dominated by your own need for validation. This is rebirth, as the self-authored. By day 30, you're not the same person. Can't be. The part of you that needed the trial is dead, starved of the attention it craved, and what's left is something the old you wouldn't recognize. You walk into rooms differently, speak differently, exist differently. People notice they can't articulate what changed. They just know you're not the same, and they adjust accordingly. Not consciously, instinctively, the way animals adjust to the presence of something higher on the food chain. What emerges from that 30-day death is not the person you were trying to become. It's the person you were before the trial began, before you learned that your existence required a defense. A friend told me something last week. He's on day 43 of this protocol. He said, "I used to think people respected me because I was smart. Now I realize they feared me. And I thought fear was bad. But fear is just respect with no escape route." He's not trying to be feared. He's just stopped trying to be loved by people who never loved him in the first place. And in that vacuum, something else grew. Not fear, not love, something the ancient world understood, but we've forgotten. Gravitas, presence that pulls like gravity. Not because you're trying, because you've stopped trying to be anything other than what you are. You walk into a room and people feel it before you speak. Some primordial part of their brain recognizes that you're not seeking approval, not performing, not pretending. And that authenticity, that complete self-possession, is magnetic in a way performance never is. Women respond differently. Men defer differently. Opportunities appear that weren't there before. Not because you changed what you do, because you changed what you are. You're not defending anymore, not explaining, not justifying. You're simply present. And presence is the rarest commodity in a world where everyone is performing. Here's what nobody tells you about this transformation. When you stop explaining yourself, people start confessing to you. They tell you things they've never told anyone. Secrets, fears, truths they didn't know they were carrying. Not because you asked, because your silence created a vacuum their truth rushed in to fill. You become a gravitational field for confession, a mirror that people can't help but look into. Your boss tells you about his failing marriage. Your client tells you about the fraud he's been hiding. Your friend tells you about the addiction he's been managing. And you say very little, because you've learned that silence is more powerful than advice. Presence is more valuable than solutions. You've become what Machiavelli called the prince who is feared and not hated. Not through cruelty, through complete self-possession. Here's the fork in the road. Most people watching this will feel something stir, some ancient knowing that whispers, "This is true." And then tomorrow, when someone questions them, they'll explain anyway. Because the addiction to being understood is stronger than the desire to be free. They'll tell themselves they're just being considerate, mature, emotionally intelligent. They're not. They're being cowardly. But a few of you, maybe 1 in 100, will actually do this. Will actually go 30 days without justifying a single action. Those people will not be the same at the end. Can't be. Because the part of them that needed the trial will be dead. And what's left will be dangerous. Not dangerous like a weapon. Dangerous like truth. Like a mirror that shows people what they actually are. Not what they pretend to be. The world doesn't know what to do with people like that. Can't control them. Can't shame them. Can't pull their strings because the strings were cut. All it can do is watch. And wonder. And fear. If you're going to do this, write in the comments. Day 1. Not for me. For you. Because public declaration creates commitment. And you'll need that commitment when the craving to explain hits like withdrawal on day 3. But listen, I'm not asking everyone to do this. This path isn't for the masses. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince for peasants working the fields. He wrote it for the few who were willing to see reality without the narcotic of moral justification. If you're one of the few, you already know. The rest will keep explaining themselves until they die, wondering why they never felt free. Why success always felt like performing. Why love always felt like negotiation. Why power always lived somewhere else. And here's what I'll tell you in the next video. Something nobody talks about. Something that only becomes visible after you complete all 30 days. The invisible architecture of influence that builds itself around people who refuse to justify their existence. How silence becomes strategy. How presence becomes power. How self-possession creates a gravitational field that pulls opportunity, respect, and resources toward you without you ever having to ask. I'll show you the mechanics of it. The psychology. The exact moments where your refusal to explain changes the geometry of power in every relationship you have. But that's next week. For now, you have a choice. Defend yourself into irrelevance, or die into sovereignty. The trial is over. It always was. You just didn't know you could walk out.